And I think everybody's worked out how to work the mics, haven't they? Just press the button in front to speak, and when
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Association of South Essex Local Authorities Joint Committee. The first item on the agenda today is the election of Chair and Vice Chair. The purpose of this item is to elect a Chair and Vice Chair of the Joint Committee for the remainder of the municipal year. Do I have any nominations for Chair? Councillor Wootton.
Good morning. Councillor Chris Hossack, please, I propose.
Thank you. Is that seconded? Thank you, Councillor Sheldon. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. So duly agreed that Councillor Chris Hossack is elected Chair of the Joint Committee for the remainder of this municipal year. And I'll hand over the remainder of the chairing of the meeting to Councillor Hossack.
Thank you, and good morning. Next item, it's going to be a lonely thing up here if I don't have a vice chair. So can I call from the floor anyone to propose a vice chairman for the next year? Councillor Sheldon.
To formally propose Councillor Wootton, please, Mr.
Thank
Chairman.
you. Is there a seconder for that, please?
Seconded.
Thank you. Is that agreed by all? Agreed. Thank you. Councillor Wootton, if you'd like to join me, that'd be fantastic. Thank you. So, just while Councillor Wootton takes his seat, I'll move on to the next item of business, which is apologies for absence. I know that Councillor Gilbert is running a little bit late, so he'll be with us, I think, momentarily. Is anyone else absent? I don't know if that's the case.
Chair, you do have apologies from Councillor Kevin Bentley.
Of course I do, sorry. Yeah, and Councillor Butland is substituted, so welcome, Graham. Thank you. Okay, item 3 on our agenda is declarations of interest. If there are any in relation to any matters on the agenda, then please indicate. I don't think that's going to be the case, so I'll move on to item 4, which is a welcome introduction. I'm conscious as we're sitting here actually in Castle Point that somebody's not with us who sadly we lost earlier this year in March, which was David Marchant. And David was a real driving force and an energy behind not only Castle Point as a council, but Castle Point's role and function within ASELA. And I just think it's absolutely appropriate, as we're in Castle Point this morning, it's the first time we've got together since that very sad day when we lost David, that we should acknowledge his contribution to ASELA and to Castle Point as a whole. And I don't want to take a moment beyond that, but just to really acknowledge that David's not with us and everything he did was very much valued and actually a driving force for what we do going forward. We want to do a lot of these things in memory of David, I feel. I certainly feel that way about it. I know many of you do as well. Okay, thank you. thank you again, because I'm delighted to have been appointed as chair, alongside Simon as vice chair for the Association of South Essex Local Authorities. As we know, and I'll state the obvious, but as we're broadcasting as a joint committee for the first time, ASELA comprises of Basildon, Brentwood, Castle Point, Essex County Council, Rochford, Southend and Thurrock councils. We believe that by working together, we can deliver more for our residents and our businesses across the region that is South Essex, which is obviously a key part of the greater county of Essex. And as a collective voice, we honestly believe we can represent this part of the region of Essex very well and get attention that we feel Essex deserves as a whole. A little bit of background. Back in 2016, the local authorities that I mentioned started working together. And we just, in that recognition that by collaborating and working across boundary that we can achieve more. So that was back in 2016. In 2018, January, we evolved the partnership effectively to move it under an MOU where we could work together in a little bit more of a formal arrangement. Back in July last year, we submitted our growth prospectus to central government, and what we started to realise then is, in order to be taken seriously by, or more seriously, by government potential investors into South Essex, that to move us onto a joint committee structure would bring a number of benefits. Not least of all by improving our governance arrangements over the memorandum of understanding that we've done so far, but it's a more robust partnership arrangement, I'll say, for potential investors. It actually improves our transparency, and we're demonstrating that today, because for the first time ever in our history since 2016, the public can, and maybe they are dialed in, can watch us live and can watch us re-recorded afterwards. So I think that's a real milestone in terms of what ASELA does, because we do all of these things on behalf of the public and the businesses in our South Essex community. But of course, whilst we are a joint committee, we don't lose sight of the fact that we do maintain our independence and sovereignty as individual councils in matters that pertain to business for ourselves as individuals. So as we go into this meeting, we're going to set out our ambitious programmes for delivering economic growth to residents and businesses across South Essex. I won't steal Lynn's thunder to my right, but it's obvious to say that in a post-COVID era, it's vital that we focus on creating jobs, investing in skills, improving our digital connectivity and our physical connectivity in terms of road infrastructure, etc. Our South Essex Estuary Park is an ambitious project that it is about connectivity, but it is about the environment as well, very much so. And then, of course, the Thames Freeport. So we'll touch on some of those programmes as we go further through the meeting. But I'd like to welcome everybody here. It's great to see there are some new faces. Perry Gladding is here from Opportunity South Essex, so it's good to have you with us, Perry. That is a marked shift from just leaders meeting. So I think it's great that you're here as well. So that's just a few opening comments from me. Without further ado, I'm going to move on to item 5. And I'm going to turn to Lynn to give us an overview, Lynn, of our priorities and programmes. What I will say, just before we do that as well, is we are going to make a change to the agenda as we go through. And item 9, I think, is we're going to pull that in light of, is that correct? In light of the budget announcement yesterday, because there's just some information from that we need to assimilate to see how we present item 9. So that's going to be pulled, just so you know. But it's because of the budget announcement yesterday. Lynn, if I can turn to you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hossack. Okay, there is a presentation for you today, which you'll see on the screen above you. If we could go to the first slide, Stephen. So you have a report in front of you, and this is to update the joint committee on the progress so far, ahead of us talking about the update on the 5 key programmes. The vision for South Essex, as we submitted in the Growth and Recovery Perspective last July, really brings together all those elements which, as leaders and officers across South Essex, has been agreed are really important to residents and businesses. And as you can see from this slide, it covers a whole range of activity, really important at this moment in time, particularly as we enter the post-COVID era. And the ethos of what we're doing in terms of working together is to deliver more than we could do individually as local authorities. You'll hear more about the 5 key programmes as we move forward, and I will reflect particularly on connectivity and transport towards the end. Thank you, Stephen. So the work of ASELA to date has delivered 5 key programmes as the anchor programmes for South Essex, and as you can see, these are on the screen in front of you, all of which are interrelated and have a hopefully positive impact on the lives of our residents and businesses going forward. And just to reflect a little bit on each of those, unlocking homes on sites across South Essex and delivering major new settlements for infrastructure and housing. Really aware of the fact that some residents and businesses across South Essex do not have really good, strong digital connectivity, and the work we're doing around that to drive up investment to around £100 million will really unlock people's ability to access good quality data. Work is going on with the private sector leads to a really innovative new technical university, which will start in September 2023, highly ambitious and being led by a number of key partners across South Essex. And that will enable residents and young people in particular in South Essex to access the right skills to enable them to secure the growth in jobs which we're anticipating across the area. Our South Essex Estuary Park is massively innovative, and you'll hear more about that in the update later, but to connect green-blue infrastructure across 23,000 hectares of South Essex, ranging all the way from Brentwood in the west down to Rochford, and in particular improving accessibility along the riverfront, 70 kilometres from Tilbury all the way down to Shoeburyness. Highly ambitious, and we believe will make a massive impact across all the key areas of focus that local authorities have. And then finally, the Thames Freeport, that will be discussed in a little bit more detail in the update later on. Highly ambitious, private sector led. I'm delighted to announce that the Thames Freeport is over the line and has been approved by government and will be going live in terms of the 3 tax sites on the 19th of November. And again, we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail later on. Thanks, Stephen. So I'm just going to touch on these very, very briefly. The ambition here, as you can see, for the digital connectivity is that every household, business and community facility will have high-speed digital connectivity within 4 years. And that's the vision that we've set out, and the work programme you hear about later will explain how that will happen. We already have secured funding for the LFFN network to nearly 130 public service facilities across South Essex. All of that has been delivered on time and on budget, and is helping to lever in nearly 100 million private sector funding to deliver that ambition. Thank you. Our South Essex Technical University is a really innovative, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to provide skills access for residents and young people across South Essex, which is based on the growth in jobs and the type of employment availability, so we can address some of the long-term deprivation that we've seen in South Essex. Highly ambitious. It's intended that the university is virtually open in September 2023, so less than 2 years from now, and an update will be given on progress on that later in the agenda. So again, we'll cover this in a little bit more detail, but as you can see, an innovative investment-led approach by private sector partners, supported by the work that we're doing as ASELA, supporting and complementary to existing provision already in South Essex, not duplicating but providing a real new pathway for those whose traditional further and higher education may not be for them for a whole range of reasons. And a real progressive link between higher education and jobs. And that's a really important differential perhaps of work that's happened before. Our South Essex Estuary Park is much more than a park, as we've said. It will help us to address some of the challenges that our residents and businesses experience at this moment in time, and particular focus through the green-blue infrastructure work that South Essex have done on improving active travel, delivering better opportunity in terms of open space, creating positive contributions through biodiversity and ecosystems to issues such as natural flood alleviation, working to provide businesses with an opportunity to set carbon neutral plans, and really driving ecotourism, jobs growth and green curriculum activities. Huge scale response, 23,000 hectares, of which the majority of that will be new green space and connected areas of accessibility for our local residents. Hugely ambitious. This isn't something that will be done in a short period of time. This is a commitment that ASELA has made over a period of time to improve South Essex and connect the existing networks to really drive better outcomes for residents and businesses. And as you can see, there are 5 key areas that the work of Sea Park will look to join up: Brentwood Parklands, the Mardyke Valley, Central Thames Marshland, Woodland Arc and the Island Wetlands. Hugely ambitious. We're looking to launch Sea Park in March next year, and there'll be work done through that and through your joint committee chair in terms of the progress towards that. Just a summary of some of the benefits of Sea Park, which we share with you. Really exciting opportunity, and again, you'll hear more about that later on. Meets a lot of the local authority, business and government ambitions around green and active space. Really using our open space to deal with the pressures of biodiversity, flood mitigation, which I've mentioned before, and create the opportunity for South Essex to be the best that it possibly can be. Thames Freeport, we'll talk a little bit about that more in the update. It was announced by government yesterday that the Thames Freeport, along with only 2 other freeports in the country, are now at the stage where parliamentary legislation will be laid on Friday tomorrow. The 3 tax sites, Port of Tilbury, DP World and Ford and Dagenham, will go live on the 19th of November. Hugely ambitious, huge number of new jobs growth as a result of this, all of which is interconnected with the work that we are doing as ASELA, and the legacy will reach far beyond the actual borough boundaries that are the Freeport itself. And some of the key headlines, which I know leaders will be aware of, but the Freeport will deliver over £5 billion of GVA over the next few years. Approximately 25,000 new direct jobs will be created as a result of the Freeport, and approximately another 30,000 indirect jobs in supply chains beyond that. There's already 1,700 acres of development land, and you'll have seen potentially in the press recently that £300 million is already being invested in DP World for a new 4th berth. And the ambitions of the Freeport is about using the power of the opportunity to really address deprivation in those communities which for decades have not had the ability to drive opportunity through them. And the Freeport area covers 20% of the UK's most deprived communities in this area. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to make a significant change for our communities here in South Essex. So some information to leave you with. Lots of benefits which cross over into the agenda of ASELA and what we included in our growth and recovery perspective to government, not least of which is that £4.5 billion of private and public sector investment. As the lead local authority, Thurrock Council will be able to retain additional business rates of up to £300 million and invest them in a range of ways which benefit not only the areas within the Freeport, but much more widely, such as the active travel, looking at links between South Essex, investment in health and well-being facilities, driving better educational outcomes, looking at multimodal travel in a way which will improve rail and river infrastructure and therefore help deliver less congestion on our roads and better improved air quality. And of course the digital and green agenda, delivering high-speed internet opportunities and really grasping the hydrogen opportunity which we know exists in this country. So very exciting. We will say a little bit more about infrastructure and housing later, but the programme here, we are one of only 2 partnerships in the whole country to have a partnership with Homes England to look at unlocking those sites which already have planning application through investing to look at infrastructure needs, work with private sector developers, address the pipeline up until 2029, look at opportunities across new settlements, and work is already progressing in that area. And as well as obviously delivering much needed homes and infrastructure for our residents and businesses, we should also mention that this programme is likely to deliver 30,000 new construction jobs in the supply chains as a result of it. So a £2.3 billion economic add to the work of South Essex. Here's a little bit of the timeline around the accelerated housing delivery. And Chairman, there will be a paper to the Joint Committee at your meeting in January, which will bring forward the updated Memorandum of Understanding, which leaders will be asked to consider in terms of our partnership with Homes England. And as a result of the work that's going on, you can see that there are a number of milestones which have been met. The budget yesterday has introduced another range of opportunities, which is why we've asked for a deferral on item 9, and we will bring that back in January. But I think it's worth acknowledging that, again, we are one of only 2 places in the whole of the country that Homes England are partnershiping with us to invest significant funds to help us unlock the opportunity for homes. Looking at Stephen. There we go. That's the last one. So thank you for that. And finally, Chairman, if I may, just draw the committee's attention to 4.2 in the report. Just want to acknowledge that whilst we have the 5 key programmes, which will shortly be asked for your agreement to, clearly transport and mobility requirements are really important. And whilst there isn't a separate key programme, what officers will be doing is bringing back work for your consideration at your meeting in January, which demonstrates the interconnectivity of transport requirements across the 5 key programmes, how that all joins up in terms of active travel network, and also the path to how we create South Essex as a zero carbon location going forward. So that's the response to the challenge that leaders have made before. It will be back here in January, and welcome any comments, Chairman, on the report in front of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. I'm conscious that as we go further into the agenda, we'll look at the individual programmes in more detail, in particularly looking at how they're progressing, looking at some of the risks around that. So that would be a good time to maybe get into more detailed questions about each programme. But I'm not averse to, if anyone's got any questions based on what they've seen, just from Lynn for the last few moments, if they wanted to ask a question, they may. I'll come to you both momentarily as well. But before I do, the other thing that struck me about that as Lynn was going through it, particularly with the Freeport, which is hot off the press good news, what it really occurs to me is that's what this is all about. So we come together as a partnership, and from time to time it falls on individual partners to take the strain on certain elements of delivery. And I wanted to thank you, Lynn, and Mark, while you're in the room, that Thurrock really took the strain in terms of pulling things together to get that submission in for the Freeport. That's been successful, and that is not just a benefit to Thurrock but the wider region and the county as a whole. So I think that's what it's all about. So I wanted to thank Thurrock in particular for the work that you all did in terms of getting a really good result out of that. Councillor Sheldon and then Councillor Baggott. Did anyone else indicate as well? I was just the two. Thank you. Councillor Sheldon.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and thank you to Mrs Carpenter for that fantastic report. I think it sets out a very bold and ambitious plan, a very good starter for 10 for ASELA. Hopefully we're going to move on to achieve all of those things and do more and greater things in the future. If I can just clarify one or two particular things though, because I think, although everybody I think is certainly very much in agreement as to the programmes and then assessed, I just want to emphasise one thing, because we all know that housing development in the south of Essex is controversial, and we all know the history of ASELA, and indeed its birthing, if you like, was when it was first envisioned, it was something perhaps slightly different to what it is now. So I do just want to underline, I think, certainly for this committee, but also for residents who are watching at home, that in regards to ensuring that the housing and infrastructure that is detailed, I think, in one of the key anchor programmes is delivered. It is about making sure that those applications that the actual councils themselves have approved or that have themselves voted through as part of the local plan are delivered. This isn't about pushing housing on the southeast or on a particular area. Indeed, when it comes to housing, it's about ensuring that the housing that the local authorities themselves want, local authorities themselves have agreed via a planning application, agreed via their local plans, are delivered. And the infrastructure that everybody knows we need in South Essex is we work together to deliver the key infrastructure as part of those applications. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Councillor, sort of people, I don't know if Councillor Baggett's got something that's different possibly, but I noticed a couple of people putting hands up probably in response to that, so I'll just defer for a moment, Councillor Baggett. Councillor Cockshaw and Lynn, do you want to come in first, and then Councillor Cockshaw?
If I may just follow Councillor Sheldon, which was really right. The ethos of the work that ASELA is doing is that planning remains a sovereign issue, and each local authority has their responsibilities around their own local plans, which I think is the point Councillor Sheldon's making really well. What the partnership with Homes England will do is provide additional funding to allot those sites which already have planning permission in line with local plans, where the infrastructure requirements would have been too significant on their own to enable developers to move forward with their proposals. And of course, the other element, which perhaps I should have mentioned, is leaders will recall the work that is going on at the moment around a joint strategic plan, which is our framework document. It's not a statutory plan because the statutory element sits within each individual's local plans, but leaders will recall the conversation around creating a JSP framework, which will be brought forward again to this meeting in the near future, which gives that overview about how we will deliver the placemaking agenda across South Essex. So sovereign local plans, joined up partnership with Homes England to unlock additional funding where those sites are not being brought forward, a joint strategic plan framework, which gives us a vision for the future of South Essex in relation to our key programmes. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cockshaw.
Yeah, I don't want to disagree with my colleague next door, but I think housing is one of the biggest issues of the South Essex. Just in Thurrock alone, the house prices have gone up by 75%, which is nearly the highest in the country outside London. That means that it's unaffordable to get a home, which I was able to do, my grandchildren home. I think it's the biggest issue in this area that we need to deliver new, good, affordable homes for people, and I think we've got to be ambitious in this. It's one of the reasons I joined this committee at the beginning. I think it doesn't need to just be about homes, and it's got to be about infrastructure and the wider things that the council, that Lynn's thing. But homes is critical to this. We can't carry on with 75% inflation in homes. That makes it unaffordable for the people coming from and the next generation. My children have got no homes to go to. It's great news that we're all living longer. It's not about immigration, it's not about anything else, but it's people living longer in life, wanting their home and not moving, and then we just got to that next generation, and I am here to deliver a good number of homes, and that's the most exciting thing of it. We want to be ambitious about our home numbers, and the government is willing to put their money where their mouth is. We just need to take that lead and give that offer of the central government, and we must move forward with homes. It is critical for the next generation.
Thank you, Councillor Cottrell. I think you're right. Affordability for this part of the country is a massive challenge, and getting people onto the property ladder, young people, is something that we need to consider strategies around that. Councillor Gilbert.
Thank you, and apologies for lateness, Chair. I agree with what Councillor Cottrell says to a large extent. In Southend, there are controversial elements within the discussions that we're taking forward around our local plan. However, this isn't about those long-term planning issues at this stage. You know, this is primarily about this is entirely about delivering on sites that have been stalled for a significant amount of time. And one thing that people in Southend, I think, are rightly fed up of is people who talk about development and make promises and end up with sites sitting empty for years and years and years. I think this partnership with Homes England is an amazing opportunity to actually unlock those sites that we actually all agree can be developed and put into a more practical use. And I just wonder if perhaps Lynn could give us a little more detail about just where we are with the agreement on that partnership and how that might start to take shape.
Thank you. I'm going to kick myself if Councillor Baggott wants to raise a point on homes, because there was a bit of a flow around homes. But I'm going to come to Councillor Baggott, and maybe we can come to that point in a second, Councillor Gilbert.
Well, Chairman, this is all your fault, because yes, I did want to raise about homes, and as is the one with these things, I did have 1 point, and now I've got more than 1 point. So it's all on you now, Chairman. When I first sat in ASELA 3 years ago, and I want to publicly thank all the members, all the officers that have got us to where we are now. When I sat at ASELA 3 years ago, it was totally fixated on homes, 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 build, build, build. No thought about infrastructure, no thought about the message to the public. And the message to the public was deeply unpopular, because the public do not get the fact that everybody's talking about building homes when we're not talking about infrastructure, and everybody can give you their example of how it is the 127 gets clogged up, the A113 gets clogged up, queues for doctor surgeries, not being able to get into local schools, etc., etc., etc. And with the help of our Chief Executive, what we were talking about at the time was that what it should be about is growing economies, creating jobs. When you grow economies, when you create jobs, as a byproduct, you need homes. But with homes, there needs to be the recognition of infrastructure, and infrastructure should always be first and foremost in our mind when we're talking about those homes. And I've got to say that direction of travel has significantly changed over time, and I thank, as I say, all the members and all the officers that are here today for getting us to the position where we are now. Because I do think that is now where ASELA is at. It's about growing the economy. It's about creating jobs. It's about recognising that if we are going to build the homes that are needed for that, that we put the infrastructure in first. So I would thank them for that. But the point that Councillor Cottrell brought up, and it is a really important point, this issue of affordability. And I think we have to be careful that we're not fundamentally misleading the public, because the government do right now. When the government talk about affordable homes, they talk about a formula, as the government are fixated on formulas on things, about what is affordable. Well, I'll tell you what's affordable. It's called, you earn an amount of money, you can borrow an amount of money based on your earnings, and that tells you whether you can buy a house or not. That's affordable. And the majority of homes that are being put forward are not affordable to the average person. And it is incumbent upon us, and is incumbent upon government, to start thinking outside the box. I know they've already done some good work, but we really need to think about what can we do to make really, really affordable homes. Affordable homes by the definition of the common man, and not the definition by civil servants or big government. It has to be truly affordable. I think that's our challenge. And if we solve that and crack that particular nut, I think we can go back and say we've done a really good job. But we do need to tackle the issue of affordable homes, and we also need to be clear with the public what we mean when we use the word affordable homes. On the other point, which is now completely moving away from homes, which is 4.2, which is Mrs. Carpenter brought up, and that's the Joined Up Active Travel Network. I mean, of course, Essex County Council is the council that covers the majority of Essex, and I know they're doing a piece of work based upon the Bus Back Better programme of national government. I just want really to make sure that we're not actually double working or operating in some sort of silo here, and how the work that Essex County Council are doing on their network travel isn't going to somehow contradict anything that we do here.
Thank you, Councillor Baggett. I think being put to the back of the queue was good because you made a lot of good summary points, and I really like the clarity of the way you made the point about affordability. It's about income multiples and what can I borrow to actually buy a property. And there's so many different variations and thoughts about what affordable is. Affordable is what you can afford. It's as simple as that. And it is a challenge, but it's a challenge because it's market driven. And as you talked about infrastructure, again, that's, as you say, that's where the focus is with ASELA now. It is not infrastructure-led growth, infrastructure for homes, but infrastructure for businesses, for factories, for freeports, and access to all of these places where jobs will be created. So I think you made those points very, very well. So I thank you for it. Prior to that, Councillor Gilbert, you asked a question. I think just before you'd arrived, I had said at the beginning we were going to pull item 9, which is the housing programme report, in light of some changes that happened at the budget yesterday. We just need to let those wash through and we'll re-present this report. But you have asked a question now, and I wonder, Martin, would it be possible to come to you maybe to touch on the question posed by Councillor Gilbert?
Thank you, Chair. So just by way of an update, Homes England over last year and this year have provided South Essex with £750,000 worth of capacity funding to support our joint work on housing. And there are 3 main aspects to report to the committee. So the first is that we want to do more work on the pipeline of stalled schemes that has been referred to so far. And we want to make sure that that pipeline of stalled schemes aligns with the monies that have been announced by the Chancellor in his statement yesterday. And we want to bring to this committee a view about that position in time for the next meeting in January. The second thing is that what we want to do is we want to further the work that we've been doing with small, medium enterprise businesses, building businesses and developers in South Essex, so that we can encourage them to get access to schemes that they wouldn't previously have been able to get to because of their size and scale. Because we know that SMEs in particular have had particular cash flow issues over recent times, and that has been an inhibitor to allowing them to get into schemes that they would be able to accelerate on our collective behalf. And the third thing that we want to do is we want to further the work that we've been doing with housing providers, and particularly in relation to affordable housing, to Councillor Coxall's point earlier, so that we can bring forward and accelerate a stronger programme of affordable housing across this area by housing associations working as a collective rather than individually, so that we are more effective and more efficient in the way in which we bring that pipeline of schemes forward.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to park up the homes piece there for a moment, unless Councillor Wharton, you want to come in about homes, but you've said you'd like to contribute. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, and firstly, thank you, members, for electing me as Vice Chairman of ASELA for the remaining municipal year. But just coming back to this business about infrastructure, there was a conscious effort to actually switch infrastructure and make that the priority in the heading under item 9, one of the key work streams. But I have said in Rochford that infrastructure is more than actually connecting a 12-inch sewage pipe to a 6-inch sewage pipe to the existing infrastructure. This is about real infrastructure, and making sure that we hold developers to account to put in new services. I think about a roundabout that has gone into Rochford in recent weeks. It was opened a few weeks ago at the junction of Rorath Lane, and that is making a huge difference to traffic flows in the district. And it is nothing to do with the development. It was funded by David Wilson and other parties, but it is nothing to do with their development. It was a recognition that that was a major major transport bottleneck. But I would just like to go back to actually this point and thank Lynn Carpenter for going through the headlines, because when I came to the table of ASELA in July 2020, frankly, I was quite concerned about the governance and about what it was actually attempting to achieve. And there seemed to be a blurring of objectives. And when I listen today, where we've actually come, I get very excited at the fact that we're now a joint committee, a properly formed governance group that can actually make a difference in South Essex. I think we struggled in the last few years, however well our intentions were, to actually achieve that. But now moving forward, we've got clarity of purpose. The objectives, the core objectives, the 5 core objectives, they are interlinked, and it is about growing the economy. It's about providing a better quality of life. But I certainly take Councillor Coxall's point about it is no good having all this exciting ambition if we don't make it an attractive place to live and to enable future generations to be affordable to live in. You know, we can pat ourselves on the back and have everything that we like in the economy, but if we're not recognising the future, an important point. Thank you very much indeed, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Wooden. Okay, so we'll move on from that item. Thank you, Lynn, for the update. As I say, we'll get into a bit more detail on 4 of the 5 programmes as we go through this agenda anyway. So there'll be opportunity for a bit more questioning then, if that's what members or leaders wish to do. So I'm going to move on from that item to item 6, which is the ASELA, or the Association of South Essex Local Authorities, Joint Committee Governance Arrangements. So I think all of us now have taken to our individual councils what it would mean for each individual council to form part of a joint committee under the ASELA umbrella, and we've gone through the governance arrangements with our own councils. We've talked about what a joint committee is, and we've talked about what a joint committee isn't. We've talked about what it can do for the region, and we've talked about where the line stops in terms of matters pertaining to sovereignty, and Councillor Sheldon talked about individual local development plans, probably the most obvious case in point, and local planning decisions. So there's lots of measures, controls, limitations within it, and that's what we've all agreed and worked through over a period of time. So I think we're all in a position to do it, but as we come together collectively now for the first time, it's about actually adopting it as a joint committee here. So there are 5 recommendations in this report. I won't read them all out. You can see them there on page 2 of this report. Scott, is there anything, you've been the lead chief exec on this one, is there anything you want to add to this, or shall I just throw it open for questions, or are people happy with the recommendations and we just move on? But I'll give you a moment, Scott.
Yeah, I mean, you've got a good intro, Chairman. All I'd add is the good news is to say that after speaking to Councillor Bentley, that Essex are signed up to the Joint Committee today as well. And it's important to recognise, as you said earlier, that Opportunity South Essex are part of the board, and now and again a federated board where businesses are at the table. So that's something you wanted to do, and the objective of this one is about making what ASELA does more transparent, which is why we're here formally today. And we will be looking, as the programme develops, which members have all said about how this evolves, we will look at and review the terms and conditions of the committee and decision-making powers. But as you rightly said, and just to remind members that this does not take any powers away from each of the own sovereign body councils. It's a collective decision-making programme on things they can't do on their own. And that's what the programme's all about. Happy to take any questions. I'm pleased to say that Angela Hutchinson's here as a monitoring officer, can help me if there are any real detailed questions around governance.
was that a hospital pass? Okay, Councillor Butland.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm sure if Councillor Bentley was here, probably at this point he would want to make it quite clear that Essex County Council's involvement in this is genuine and enthusiastic. It is a quite clear change from the previous administration, and Kevin and I work very closely on these issues, and so we very much welcome the opportunity, but it is not just a piece of window dressing. Essex County Council intends to be an active, equal partner with colleagues.
Thank you. That's good to hear, and it's most reassuring. And we should never lose sight of this. ASELA is part of Essex. We are part of the county of Essex, and having yourselves at the table enthusiastically in that partnership spirit is really appreciated. And you're a key player in the partnership here in terms of what we talked about before, in terms of infrastructure and things like that. So that's absolutely key. Councillor Baggett, I think I saw your hand go up, and then Councillor Coxall, I'll come to you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm obviously in a very thankful mood today because, again, wanted to thank everybody around the table. I think that local government is about not only just representing the people, but sometimes it's about making difficult decisions or decisions that are uncomfortable as opposed to just taking an easy route. And again, when I was with ASELA in a previous incarnation, the easy route was for it to continue to sit in rooms, discuss things like infrastructure, talk about their ambitions, which were very laudable, but actually hide it in a room without that public transparency. And the step change to actually then come out and to be able to say, we are accountable, we are answerable to the people, there is nothing to fear, there's nothing to hide, there's nothing that is secret that we're doing, we are actually doing this for you and representing you to the best of our ability, was a difficult decision, I think, for some, but absolutely the right decision. And I want to commend everybody for getting us to where we are today, where we're actually sitting around and having the ability for the public to view this webcast and see it later, and then be able to ask questions as a result. And I know from my experience we have members of the public that take an unhealthy interest sometimes in infrastructure and what goes on in these sort of committees, but we should welcome it and we should welcome that challenge. So first of all, thank you for that. But secondly, in the recommendations, 1.5, which is we consider and identify any other bodies or persons. Something that when I took office at the council, what was very, very clear from the public is that the green agenda, the move to zero carbon, is fundamentally important. And I took the view and laid down the challenge to officers, which we haven't achieved yet, I've got to say. So setting ourselves up for a fall in a way, that if you're going to be serious about zero carbon and climate change, you really need somebody that understands climate change and is a credible figure and an authority in that particular area. Members are very, very good at getting elected, and then they become experts on all sorts of things in all sorts of walks of life all of a sudden that maybe they didn't even have an interest in beforehand. And I think it's a bit wrong for a member to suddenly become an expert on something as fundamentally important as this. And if we are talking about infrastructure and home building and all the sort of things that actually do have an impact on climate change, I think what we should maybe consider is who the right individual or the right body is to be able to give us that input and that insight into the sort of things that we should be considering as we move to put in the infrastructure and the homes that we've been talking about.
Thank you for that, and I think you're absolutely right. I mean, we're setting out the principles of co-option to this joint committee here, and having Perry on board and bringing Opportunity South Essex into it shows that commitment to co-opt people in who've got an expertise. But you're quite right, just because you're a leader of a council doesn't mean you may be an expert on something, but you can't be an expert on everything. So I think what this does in 1.5 is does pave the way for that, and I think you're absolutely right that the one type of person we should be looking to co-opt in fairly swiftly after this is somebody who's got some real expertise and can offer something to Essex as a whole, South Essex, ASELA, in terms of what can we do to tackle the climate change agenda, the loss of biodiversity and all of these pressures that are on us, and encourage us through our CPART programme as well. So I think you make a valid point. I think it's something we need to be mindful of, and we are in the market. I think it would be fair to say to try and co-opt that sort of expertise in, and there'll be other elements of expertise, but that's what I like about 1.5. It allows those experts to come in into this committee. Councillor Coxall, you'd indicated.
At a point, just to clarify, we're not in Essex unitary. The Essex County Council Thurrock is a completely unitary, and it's not. It's in the county of Essex. That's what I was making the point. We're not going back.
There's absolute clarity on that. Thank you. And it's a diverse organisation, a diverse committee. Councillor Butland.
I'm not going to follow that. It wasn't me who made that remark. Can I just say on climate change, certainly the County Council with the Climate Change Commission, the report from that, done a huge amount of work on that. I wasn't going to interrupt before, but it's clearly when we're talking about infrastructure, we're not just talking about roads and cars. That will be something which the county will want to bring very clearly to the table. But there is a lot of work there. There's a lot of, the Commission itself had a lot of very good people on it outside of locally elected members who knew what they were talking about. And it may be an idea that contact is made in that way to see. We don't want to redo that sort of thing, but I'm sure, again, if the leader was here, he would very much want to offer that as a resource to ASELA.
Yep, totally agree. And I think for some of the districts within ASELA, that's already a resource we tap into, and we attend meetings out of that. So I think you're absolutely right, Graham. We don't want to be reinventing the wheel here. That expertise is available to us, and whether we can tap into it. But let's get in the market, as I say, and find out what the right individual is to bring that expertise to us. Scott.
It's just really to add to Councillor Button's point, and Councillor Banks mentioned earlier, and Lynn alluded to earlier around the working with Essex on what I would call mobility. So let's not call it infrastructure, in terms of how do we get around the place, which is the missing piece of that place-shaping jigsaw, and not using the A127 as we've done. So part of that is what have we already put, so our own group of ASELA through the housing programme to pick up the key points that we've learnt as part of that, the future need, as well as the work that Essex and the other two highway authorities are all doing. So that's what they're coming together to then present back to you in January about what do we do now to take this forward. So share the learning, make sure we don't have duplication, as Councillor Baggett said, because I know there was the work on the A127 task force. So bringing all that together to say what is that picture first of all, and what else do we need to then for the future purpose of mobility to deliver those 5 programmes. So how do the mobility to underpin those 5 programmes is the key point.
Okay, I'm not seeing anybody else looking to contribute on this item. So we've got those 5 recommendations in front of us. I guess the appropriate way to go about this as a joint committee, I think this is our first vote, so we'll just do it on a show of hands, Scott. Would that be the right way to do it? So if leaders, committee members are happy with recommendations 1 to 5 as laid out on page 2, can they please indicate? Okay, thank you. That's unanimous. So that's a good start to the joint committee. So thank you very much. Let's move on to the next item, which is item 7, and I'm going to turn to Mr. Chris Mills, who's going to take us through the finance report for ASELA. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chairman. Please excuse my voice. Okay, so this will become a regular and more or less routine report to the Joint Committee. It will refer to the Council at the Joint Committee's budget and each of the programmed works, but there'll be more detail in those programme highlight reports. This report won't repeat anything that's in those. So ASELA sets the budget at the start of each financial year, as you will expect, and during the course of the year there are a series of reconciliation processes between the budget itself and the detailed work programmes. The table over at 2.1 summarises the funding that has been enabled by ASELA, attracted by ASELA activities and brought into South Essex. And we will keep a running total of that funding, and hopefully that will significantly increase as ASELA lives on. Section 3 sets out the budget for 21-22 and shows the different funding streams and each of the work programmes. And it shows at the bottom of that table that there is a surplus at the end of the current financial year. Over on the next table at 3.3, we maintain our ASELA reserve, and that will just deal with fluctuations from year to year on the ASELA budget. And at the current position, we're showing a surplus at the end of this financial year of 202,000. So everything is looking good, very positive. The reserve is good. Everything is within budget, and there are no issues to report to the Joint Committee at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. I think what's important to note there, and again, it's worth highlighting this at our first meeting, is if you look at the income, what ASELA has managed to do, even up until this point, is where we've secured funding from government departments and other agencies like Homes England, National Highways. This is what it's all about. It's about this group, this committee, about trying to promote the area and attract investment into it. And so far, we've got a track record of doing that. I think the full FIBRE programme is most notable. So we're grateful. I think it's worth putting on record. We're grateful to those agencies, government departments that have shown an active interest and put their money where their mouth is, should we say, for South Essex already, because it is making a difference on the ground. And as I say, the FIBRE network programme is a really great example of that. So I think that's one of the highlights I wanted to pull out of the numbers, without getting into the numbers in detail, that they show what they are. Has anyone else got any questions on this finance report? Councillor Wootton.
Thank you, Chairman. Look, I really welcome this report, because this is the benefit now of being a joint committee. One of the concerns that I certainly had was, where was the accountability, where was the money going that we were subscribing to as part of a club, where were we getting benefits? And what this does is it brings out into the open exactly what our financial position is. The other thing which I think is absolutely great, and I was delighted to read, is in 3.4, the ambition to make ASELA self-funded, because there have been issues in the past about the apportionment, the way in which we subscribe, you know, I think we've got to celebrate the fact that we've got to this point today through that system, but really sort of move forward and remember that every penny that we put in historically, whilst the return on investment has been significant when you look at what has been achieved, nevertheless the subscription has been public money, public funds going into it. So I really welcome the fact that we are bold, proud and ambitious enough to say that the delivery of these objectives are so strong that they will eventually self-fund themselves. Thank you very much indeed, Chairman.
Thank you. The other point on that journey to mention, and you know, so far we've been successful in securing public money largely, but there's an element of private money coming into this with some of the projects that we're looking at as well, and we're grateful to those partners. And we'll look to seek to expand that. So, you know, the technical university, looking at job creation, skills, etc. This is absolutely where we need to be partnering up with businesses who are looking to their futures and looking what we can do to provide skills infrastructure for their own growth and their own growth aspirations as well. So that's important. Can I ask one question actually? And if you haven't got the answer, maybe I should have brought this up before. But there was something I just saw there as I was going through this. It escapes me now straight away, which doesn't help. There was a piece of the no use empty. Has anyone got an update as to how that money that's come in has had an impact so far? What has that actually achieved? Forgive me if nobody's in a position to answer it, but it's something I would like to take away and just find out what impact that cash has had. Somebody in a position? Andrew, yeah, thanks.
Chairman, that's a scheme which is managed by Southend Council on behalf of the partnership here today, and it's just actually relaunched. So the purpose of it is to encourage the regeneration of key town centres, particularly high streets across South Essex, and the idea is to encourage operators to take shop units in our town centres and use them for things that are perhaps more imaginative or innovative than just retail outlets. So there are some discussions at the moment ongoing with a number of partners across the piece to look at using that grant funding to encourage people to animate our town centres in a way that they haven't been done in the past. I think if it would be helpful, more than happy to bring an update report to your January committee chair to give leaders a little bit more sight on that programme than they might have had already.
Thank you, Andy. I think that would be useful, actually. And the other thing I'm mindful of as we sit here collectively, we represent a number of different town centres and high streets. So one size doesn't always fit all. Different town centres have different dynamics, even different cultures to an extent. So are we going to look at a point going forward where different partners here at the table can come and say, actually, we've got a suggestion for that budget as to how that might be applied in Brentwood or Rayleigh or Southend? Is that how it would work, or how are we going to take the cash, if you like, and make it actively have an impact in the various locations around South Essex?
So, Chairman, that is the intention. As with all grant funds, there are grant criteria that are attached to them that have to be met and discharged. But what you have described is essentially the purpose of the fund. So the need in Southend might be very different to the need in Grays, might be very different to the need in Basildon, but the purpose is to encourage the no use empty is kind of what it says on the tin. It's trying to encourage different uses of buildings to animate town centres and traditional shopping areas, to increase footfall and activity and economic spend in those areas. But that is the purpose as you've described, Chairman.
That's good, and I think that'll be good. It'll be exciting when we can start to actively, as leaders, come back and put those suggestions forward and get that activity stimulated in the town centres. So I'm looking forward to that. Councillor Sheldon.
Thank you very much, Chairman. And can I thank Miss Mills for her report. It's very good to see that we're starting off on a sound financial footing. If I can ask, drawing members' attention to 3.1, the table in 3.1, can I say I think it's just a testament, I suppose, to the work of ASELA already, that we would have a large plurality of our income coming from other partners rather than just the subscription. But I'm wondering if it's worth, perhaps, just for the benefit of us and indeed for those watching as well, perhaps if we can go into a little bit more detail now regarding the income from those other partners and who precisely they are, and indeed, I suppose, the largest, funders in those other partners. But also as well, just below that in the budget line, there's also a line saying additional funding from ASELA authorities. And of course, we know the subscription we pay for this. I'm just wondering, however, if perhaps we could just be given a little bit more detail about the additional funding for ASELA authorities, from ASELA authorities, cast as income on that budget line, if that's acceptable, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, absolutely. Chris, can I come to you for that? I think that's a good point, and it helps paint the fuller picture.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Sheldon. Yes, so there is additional income that other authorities or ASELA authorities put in specifically to their programmes, so the programmes that they actually lead on. So the line with 260,000, within that there'll be additional contributions which are Thurrock put into the Sea Park. I can provide a better breakdown of that, which I haven't got with me at the moment, but generally that's what it's about. And the other partners will be things like Highways England, Homes England, things like that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sheldon, are you happy with that? Is that what you were looking for?
It is. I'm wondering, perhaps if maybe circulated, we could have an itemised number in regards to the partners, to see who the biggest partners are and what amounts they're putting. I think that would be helpful, certainly.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
Scott, thank you.
I think just to add to Councillor Sheldon's point, and particularly for people listening, this, as I said, all the way along is not just the ASELA authority, is also backed by business. And I'm pleased to say through the university programme that 4 of the 5 businesses have put £10,000 into the programme themselves, which is where some of that funding's come from. And I'm also pleased to say, putting Perry on the spot, OSC are also looking at how they can contribute from their funds and their resources. So it's not just funding, it's their time and resources as businesses in to help develop in that programme. So it is backed by businesses as well, as you say, as local authorities.
Thank you. Is there any more questions on the finance report? Or are we happy to agree that and move on to the next item? Okay. Agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Next item in our agenda is item 8, which is the Freeport programme. And again, Lynn covered this at a high level at the beginning, but Lynn, if I can turn to you to take us through in a bit more detail exactly where we are with this exciting project.
So thank you, Chairman. The announcement yesterday by government to agree the Thames Freeport as one of 3 at this stage. And just to give leaders the history, you'll remember that the Chancellor announced the Freeport policy only last November. There was a very tight submission timescale to the 5th of February this year. I can't remember what year we're in now. For original bids, 18 Freeport locations in the country bid. Only 8 were successfully through the first gateway, including Thames Freeport. There were 2 dates set for submission of the outline business case, 30th of July and the 8th of September. Ourselves, along with 3 other Freeports, hit the 30th of July timescale, and that reflects, I think, the ambition of the Thames Freeport with partners to get up and running as quickly as possible. There's been significant work over the summer to refine the details in our outline business case and meet the requirements of both Treasury on the tax site designation and what is now DLUC in terms of particularly the levelling up and legacy around deprivation. So it's about both of those issues. There was an expectation that the Chancellor might make an announcement yesterday, and when he didn't, I think many of us were a little bit disappointed, to put it bluntly. However, a phone call into Treasury and DLUC confirmed that the Thames Freeport, all 3 tax sites have been approved. The other 2 that are over the line at this moment in time for interest is the Humber, and only 2 of their 3 tax sites have been approved, and the other is Teesside. So my reflections on what we've been told, and I would say this as you would know, is that actually we have got probably the strongest bid in the country, and that's a reflection of the fact that this is very much a partnership approach. I think the work that we've done across ASELA has been instrumental in supporting what's gone into the Freeport. And if you have a chance to read the Freeport submission, it is all about that broader legacy, which is what DLUC have been absolutely driving, about how we fundamentally change the deprivation. And the way I describe it is really fundamental. When you drive to the Port of Tilbury, on the right-hand side, you see all this growth and jobs and economic richness, yet on the other side, you see Tilbury, which is one of the most deprived wards in the country. And that single carriageway road cannot be the difference between unlocking the potential in some of those communities. In terms of timelines, on Monday next week, the Thames Freeport will announce their new chair and the structure that sits behind it. I think that will be a really interesting announcement. We're fortunate that we've appointed a really strong chair into that role. On the 19th of November, subject to the parliamentary legislation point, the 3 tax sites will become live, and there will be further promotion about that point. Now, the work that still needs to go on by the team behind the scenes is the writing of the final business case, which again still needs government approval. We need to get that into government by the 3rd of February, and that's where now we need to put significant further meat on the bones about how we really will deliver 21,000 direct jobs, in what locations, in what areas of business, how we really will deal with the deprivation, what our plans are, and then you can see how opportunities like the Technical University will play such a strong role in that, how the inclusion of Skills Accelerator and Skills Fund within the Thames Freeport bid is going to be absolutely critical. Thurrock is the lead accountable local authority for the Freeport, but it's really important that we acknowledge it's a private sector-led Freeport, and really respect the work that the partnership is doing. When the tax sites become live in November 21, there will be a 5-year period in which they can operate. And within that 5 years, we have a huge task to demonstrate that what we've said on the tin is what we are going to deliver. And there are significant milestones along the way and a huge amount, as you would expect, of monitoring by government to demonstrate that we're delivering all the ambition that we've set out to do. The seed funding and the ability to borrow for the business rates, and we've estimated in Thurrock that will be about £300 million, will not be possible until we get the final business case over the line. So this particular point in time is really significant, but there is still another major deadline to meet when it comes to February and the articulation of all of that. So, Chairman, I think that probably brings the leaders up to date. I'm happy to take any questions or clarify any comments.
Thank you, Lynn. I think the role when we look at these reports, these template reports in detail, is as leaders to just ensure and check that we are on track to deliver these things. And I said at the beginning, you know, you had your work cut out as Thurrock as part of that overall project board to deliver and meet that last deadline, which you did successfully, and which we're all grateful. How confident and comfortable are you that the 3rd of February deadline is achievable? Is there any, you know, what is the risk rating on that? Is there anything we can do collectively to resource and support that so that we meet that objective?
So it's probably worth reminding the Joint Committee that one of your contributions has been a day a week of time to fund additional support for us as Thurrock, for which I'm really grateful, and without that we probably wouldn't have got to where we were. The original deadline for the final business case was the 10th of December, and we estimate as a team it's 200 days of work to get that over the line, and government gave us 40 days. So I can do a lot of things, but I'm not quite sure we were going to meet that. So I think when you look at the 200 days of work, it will be tight, but everybody in this room and all officers are engaged in it already, Chairman. There is a significant amount of support that's coming. I think part of the conversation will be around how we then get into the details of the strategies around the economic growth. All of your economic leads are engaged in this through Thurrock's economic lead. All the key programmes have officers across all the boroughs tied into it. So I think it's fair to say that there is a huge amount of support coming from ASELA already to support the Freeport. But if there is anything else specific, then I know through you and leaders that request will be fully considered.
Thank you. Councillor Sheldon, Councillor Cockshaw.
Thank you. Well, first of all, can I say congratulations, actually, certainly to Thurrock Council on their hard work. I know that, of course, getting parliamentary approval is different from actually achieving it, but well done on getting this far, and I do think it's a tribute to the hard work of Thurrock Council. I know the local MPs have been very, very supportive and instrumental in making sure it goes over the line, but I'm also very pleased that ASELA is playing a part in supporting that programme, and indeed for South Essex. Can I also say that I think the approach, I suppose, congratulate yourself and indeed all of the officers involved on the approach regarding deprivation, and in ensuring, I'm very pleased to hear it's a pledge to ensure that indeed the prosperity that will come from the Freeport is I suppose, used, and that the deprived areas in particularly in South Essex, but of course in elsewhere, are going to be able to benefit from that, and that's a key ambition of ours in regards to the Freeport. I think that's certainly the right way to go, and I look forward to perhaps working. Maybe there's a greater role with us as ASELA, something we could look at individually as politicians, to work out where our deprived communities are in our area and how best they could precisely help fulfil that vision of benefiting from the prosperity that's going to come from those Freeports. I think it's precisely the right approach. Well done for all the hard work, and I'm very pleased that we're doing all we can to support you going forward.
Thank you. Councillor Cockshaw.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that Lynn missed off the report. The most important thing, one of the most important critical things that we need, but I think it's possible, when I spoke to the Freeport yesterday, was the custom sites are mid-November. There's a big difference between taxation sites and custom sites. Custom sites is an important part of that, to bring the wider port sector in, to make sure that is their driver, to actually make sure we do end up, as customs site, you expect a Freeport to have a customs entry. That's a small amount. That's just actually not government. It's just HMRC to make sure there's the fences are right, the position are right. We're not actually acting in any appropriate manner and making sure the Exchequer gets the right funding. So it's just to clarify that should be in mid-November. The customs, if we get HMRC approval for the customs site. And then there's one partner here, not here today, which is the other authority, which is Barking and Dagenham, which has been an integral partner with Fords. And the Freeport without manufacturing, I think, is one of the reasons why some of the others are with Fords, and the manufacturing of Dagenham is really important. If you look at that and amongst that, and it was making us a cluster into London, and then the closeness of Thurrock and the South Essex, and actually making sure that the Thames estuary is working as one. Remember, this is the Port of London, is now the biggest port in the country, if you talk as all the private businesses that are on the Thames. But Barking and Dagenham are an integral partner of this, and I'm hoping that without the support of the leader there, and the chief executive and the great work there, I think we would have struggled as well.
Well, I think that's a fair point. Barking and Dagenham aren't part of ASELA, but integral to this, and so I'm sure we can put on record our appreciation to Darren and Chris for the work they've done to bring that forward, and others, as we can see from the report, that are involved. Again, private sector, DP World, Forth Ports, etc. So we should put on the record our appreciation that they've done collectively as an interim board to get us to where we are. Thank you. Councillor Butland.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, can I add my congratulations to the way in which this project's been taken forward. As the full business case is developed, etc., from the County Council's point of view, could I make a plea, and I'm sure you would want to anyway, that the detail is beginning to be shared, because clearly there will be a key role for the county, not least in transport infrastructure north of the Thurrock border, because we don't want things to get there and then halt, and also in terms of the skills requirement across the South Essex residents. So I'm sure that's on your thing, but if I can just put that on the record, Essex will be very keen and willing to engage in that.
No, thank you, and you're quite right to say it. That these things just don't cut at a boundary. There's a whole network of infrastructure that needs to feed in to make this project an ongoing success, and county will be integral to that. So thank you. Any more questions on this update report? Mark, yes.
Could I ask? Obviously, I don't know. Obviously, there is actually two in Essex. There's the other bid in Essex, and I'm hoping, obviously, maybe I'm excited about our bid in Freeport, but there's still an important the Freeport East, and I'm looking forward to seeing Freeport East. And I've heard no update from the LEP and bits of which I sit on. I think Freeport East should be, so we still move forward, and we should make sure Freeport East is the next Felixstowe and Harwich bid should be moving forward at pace. I'm hoping to get an update. It'd be nice to see that come here as well. We're not in isolation.
Absolutely, it's a counterbalance to the whole county to be able to arrive at that position with the north and southwest northeast Freeport would be a fantastic situation to be in. Okay, so not seeing any more questions on that. I'd like to thank Lynn for the update, the programme update report. As I said at the beginning, item 9 we've withdrawn while we just sort of digest the update from yesterday at the budget and see how that affects our programme report. We'll see that again. I think, Martin, was that January we said we'd look at that? Thank you. So if I go on to item 10, which is the South Essex Estuary Park, or as it's affectionately known, the Sea Park. Lynn, am I coming to you again for this? I think I am very popular today, Lynn.
I am, sorry. Thank you, Chairman. So the update here from the Programme Implementation Director is for your information and comment. As I mentioned earlier, work is progressing well on phase 1 of the work, and you'll recall that the Central Thames Marshland, because of the link with the Freeport, is the area that we are starting with per se. But I do want to reassure leaders that when it comes to the launch in March, which we're aiming at, there will be information and activity that sits across all 5 of those key areas which were shown on the slide earlier. There is a working group which already exists, led by the Programme Director Sharon Bayliss. There are representatives on the group from every local authority, and they're instrumental in driving a whole range of activity. It's probably worth, Chairman, saying that what we're trying to create here is something that there's no template for anywhere else. We're not following something that someone else has created. We're finding our way in a really ambitious programme which has government interest and more broad than that around some of the major environmental groups that will support us in the delivery. And it was interesting the point that Councillor Baggett made about having the right lead here on the joint committee around the environment. One of the actions that the CPARC are doing is setting up an advisory group with key people on that we will invite in to support those conversations and who will be a check and challenge to the board. One of those may very well want to come and work with us, and we'll pick that up. In terms of the point around the Climate Commission, I'm pleased to say that we are linked very much into the work that's going on in the broader geography of Essex, and Sharon is linked into the relevant officers in that regard. There is interest from government. One of the senior civil servants is talking about coming out to South Essex in the next couple of weeks and having a look at what our ambitions are around the whole of the 5 key programmes of ASELA, and we'll be showing some of the work that's done around South Essex Park. It can be almost anything that we want it to be, but about how we deliver the significant change that we can. And at the moment, there is a focus, as we said, around the Central Thames Marshland and the funding that we've secured from National Highways and the LTC. But it will be much broader than that. And already part of what we're focusing on is the linkage into what Tyler and the Thames pathway from Tilbury all the way down to Shoeburyness. It's a little bit about how do you eat an elephant and how do you prioritise all the opportunity that exists. The bit that we are looking to get additional support on, and where the private sector in particular will be helpful, is this notion of the Green Bonds Initiative and how we support businesses in South Essex utilise an investment through a green bond scheme to offset their carbon targets, to develop the park, but also enable them to demonstrate to government that they are taking carbon neutral targeting really seriously. We're shortly to have a conversation with Treasury, who are massively interested around the Green Bond Initiative, and you'll have heard the Chancellor talk about that particular initiative quite frequently in his budget yesterday. So I think, Chairman, what you will see over time is the plans being brought forward in more detail here for your approval. There's conversations going on with all your officers across South Essex. We're mindful that we need to have that expertise through an advisory group. We're linked in as much as we can be to various experts, not only in local government but more broadly. And we're trying to develop a structured approach which shows delivery on the ground and almost allow us to demonstrate the quick wins as we launch in March next year. There's work underway which is quite different to local government branding. I think, Chairman, it was your challenge about this needs to be more than just a local government brand. Work is underway on that already, and again, we will bring that forward for your approval in the near future. But I think the key milestones are March next year, formal launch of the park, clarity of detail around some of the early deliverabilities, hugely ambitious scheme which will probably take at least a decade to 2 decades to deliver as much as we can do, and a plan about how we really underpin it with innovation around the whole carbon zero agenda and green financing initiatives, which we're all trying to work our way through at this moment in time. So I'll pause there, and again, happy to take any questions or guidance from the committee.
Thank you, Lynn. Just a couple of comments from me before we do. I think you're right. It's such a big project. It's, you know, we're all sitting here trying to digest it, and where does it start? And I think the moment we can start to see some of those specific Wave 1 deliverables and get that work underway, then we know we're making progress. It is about seeing a difference on the ground, and the public can see the difference and can see the investment from it. So I think certainly would look forward to seeing that sort of level of detail coming back. Hopefully next time we meet, maybe, if that's possible. And then the other point that was made about this, bringing this expertise in, putting a working group together on it. I think it's probably the case that most of us as individual authorities now have probably got a green officer, a climate change officer, biodiversity, for whatever we're to do, and I think we've probably all got one of them, and I think maybe pulling them together so they can, you know, it overlaps, doesn't it? It overlaps all of our local authority areas. So I think that would be a good place to start. We've just recruited one in Brentwood, and she's a really bright spark, and I'm sure she could contribute herself a lot to it. If you multiplied that by another 6, I reckon we could have a really strong group. So we might already have that expertise. A lot of these young people who are coming through have done environmental science degrees, etc., would really add some value. So I won't ask for that, but I'll put that out there. That might be a way of quickly pulling together a project team on that. Anyone else got any questions on this particular item? No? I think it's just a positive project. It's moving forward. I think the moment we can, as I say, see those early stage, Wave 1, this is where we're going to start, this is what we're going to do, this is what it will look like, and that I think would give us all some encouragement. So, Lynn, thank you. I'm going to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the full fibre digital programme. Bear with me a second, I'm just going to click across to that as well. We're getting through it quite quickly. So this was Jonathan was the lead officer on this. Jonathan's not with us today. Should have maybe said that. Apology at the beginning. So Steve, I presume you've been fully briefed to give us an update on this. I'm just doing that to make him squirm. Who's leading on this in Jonathan's absence? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So just to recap, the purpose of this programme is to create full fibre coverage across the whole of South Essex to all residences and businesses, to address the mobile coverage issues that we have in certain locations, to use the full fibre infrastructure to improve efficiency and effectiveness of public services, and to address digital exclusions. So we've made some significant progress so far, and in particular, you will have seen from the report that we are nearing the completion of the rollout of the local full fibre network to public service buildings and premises. So that will take us to nearly 150 premises, including GP surgeries and to other public service outlets, including fire stations, where full fibre coverage wasn't previously available. We're using the government funding that we secured of nearly £4.5 million to help us achieve that position. We're on track, we're on budget and on time. Secondly, we have started the rollout of that same network to village halls and community centres. And again, we have an expectation that we will complete that work within this financial year. Thirdly, that we've been attracting significant investment from private sector operators, infrastructure providers and fibre carriers who are putting money into this area faster than they would have done otherwise because of the strength of our rollout of the full fibre network that I've just mentioned. So as Lynn referred to earlier, we believe that level of investment now is over £100 million into this area. The challenge for us is to work with those providers to ensure that they deliver that rollout of their infrastructure as quickly as possible. And the fourth item is that we're working on what are called not spots. So these are areas of the South Essex area where it is difficult to get full mobile coverage in the way that we all expect. So we're working with partners and with government and with the Thames Estuary to see how we can identify those not spot areas and to then start to find the required mechanisms and funding that will address them. So good progress to report to date, but quite a significant amount of work in front of us. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think this is one of our early projects, isn't it, where we saw that cash injection from DCMS and MHCLG as was to get this rolling. And I know there's lots of work going on in the background. Michael Snaith, I think, is involved. He certainly talked to me about this next phase, which is getting into the community halls, etc., etc. I think what I would love to see, we'd all love to see at some point as we come back together is, this is all great stuff, and fibre, generally goes under the ground, it's unseen, and what we all want to know is what difference has it made? Great, a fire station is now full fibre enabled. What difference has that made to them? A community centre is now full fibre. What difference has that made? What can they do now that they couldn't do before? And I think the real measure of understanding the success of that is to understand of the people who've been recipients of this programme to articulate the benefits of it. And at some point I'd love to hear some sound bites of the difference that it's made, and then I think we'd all have more comfort than just knowing that fibre's going in everywhere. It's all about the impact it has on people's lives, really. Has anyone else got any comments on this particular update report? No, I think it's very positive. It's moving together very well. So I would request that the Joint Committee just note the progress report, and we'll move on to the next item. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. So the 12th item on our agenda, and finally, save the best for last, I think, Scott. And I'm personally really excited about this. This is a great one, because this is one of these ones that just I talked about there, that when it happens, the benefits can be really tangible. And this is our South Essex Technical University programme. So Scott, can I turn to you for this, please?
Yeah, you ruined my opening line about last but not least. But I think really what's three members of actually, I wrote down, Councillor Sheldon, Councillor Butler and Councillor Baggott spoke about this programme inadvertently as part of their commentary, so which is great about Freeport and other opportunities. So what this is about, you've seen what it is in the tin, and I'll talk about some of the challenges and risks in a second. But some of the points I want to pull out from the conversations earlier, Councillor Sheldon mentioned around Fords and Dagenham earlier, and that, although it may not be in South Essex or ASELA, it's important to Castle Point. And one of the elements of the programme is actually in every borough we are speaking to those deprived schools you spoke about. So we've already got that data. How do those schools get involved with this technical university programme to be the future pipeline for Fords, although Dagenham as well as Dunton are clearly on the board looking at that at next to 5 to 10 years. And what I will say about Fords, probably more than any other business on that board, they are looking at that distance and what that future pipeline of talent is, and they know they've got to get it from the areas of South Essex. So we need to be, as much as I love congratulating Barking and Dagenham, we want to make sure as many young people, as well as all ages, so it's not just about young school kids, get the apprenticeship opportunities for Fords of Dagenham as well as Fords of Dunton over the next few years. And what I'm pleased to say, although some of those key businesses that you've seen on the presentation may not be in Castle Point, Councillor Sheldon, it won't be your kids won't get the opportunity from those businesses, because we're all working together on that. So that was one of the key points to pulled out. And the other important thing, Councillor Butland, and probably one of the challenges is I've found education to be a real education for me, how complex and complicated it is. One, how we can get the curriculum agreed for September 23, which is a challenge, and also how precious some of our partners in education are about keeping the curriculum to themselves and not challenging the innovative way this programme is. It is business-led, and I welcome Perry if he may speak about what on the board, what he's hearing. I'm also pleased that Mark Doran, as director, is on that board for me as well, Councillor Butland. And I'm very also pleased that Tony Ball, as cabinet member, is very well in tuned with what is going on with this programme of activity. As I say, highlights of the board themselves is that the three elements that we're trying to get ready for November to bring back decisions to this board in January is the overall business case, which compromises of how does it financially stack up from apprenticeship levels to training budgets. So we're thinking a bit differently, where businesses are putting all their money into training, into individual training partners. How do we funnel that through one provider, being a higher education, and then the procurement route, and I would urge Councillor Gilbert to support me with the continued excellent support his procurement team have done to help us about the ask. I do need that support. It's a lot of work in a short period of time to meet that procurement timetable by May next year, where we will then procure a provider that will take over that board role and drive the programme. And just to be clear, from September 23, when the first cohort, maybe only about 20 young children that will pick up roles, almost definitely for Fords, who are very advanced, likely for the Southend Airport, again, who've done some sterling work, and for DP World. Olympus, as an example, Leonardo, may be slightly behind the 8 ball of where they are in their future thinking. And what's exciting for me is, and it was only from last week, interesting, how well I'm so pleased that businesses are driving this and it's not local government, is that I met Fiserv, a business in Basildon, 2,500 employees, who may well be the next tranche, and they're getting in touch with John Tabor from Fords, who's already in the programme. So they're now talking directly about their future pipeline, because they're not advancing that thinking. So this is why this is innovative. It actually is businesses talking to themselves, and our job is to facilitate and grow it. But let's be clear, for me, from what was from the outset, was how do I make sure, particularly with levelling up agendas and those sort of things we talk about now in government pots of money, is how do I make sure the most deprived wards in our boroughs, those schools get the benefit of a virtual degree, which they probably couldn't have done by the normal traditional method. So that's really one of the key anchors of the programme. How do I get schools involved? And I do think that is going to be a challenge and risk. We are working on it. We will be back hopefully in November with, I'm sure, the financial business case will be proven. I'm fairly confident of that. Procurement timetable is a challenge, and certainly getting schools and education providers engaged with the process, because although they may not be the provider, they are a key element of it, because it won't be just high-level apprenticeships. There'll be all different jobs as this evolves out of apprenticeship programmes to meet the need of Freeport over the next 5-10 years. And quite clearly, we won't be able to do it on our own. So, an exciting programme. Happy to take any questions, Chairman.
Thank you, Scott. Has anyone any questions on the university paper at all? Councillor Butland?
Really, from my own education, this is not an area that I've been very close with, but it just struck me in terms of, when you look at mileages to places like Dunton, Southend is something like, 14, 16 miles. If you swing around in an arc, you also take places which are not within the ASELA boundary. Is it open to all, I suppose, given that, unfortunately, there are areas of deprivation outside as well? Just from my education, please.
Essex County Council are on the board, so I'm no doubt that there will be a need. And one of the reasons of Freeport isn't just for it. There's not enough skills and resource if it's just South Essex to deliver the growth needs of the area. So yes, we will do, but quite clearly from a business perspective, which is one of the reasons I certainly started this programme, was that when we approached Leonardo and Fords, what they were frustrated was they were getting young children from better parts of Essex with higher skills that actually weren't part of the place of South Essex. So they would stay a year or two in Dunton, didn't really know Dunton, didn't really want to be part of South Essex because they were from Chelmsford and other parts of Essex, so they moved on. So one of the key things is that how do we recognise that people's loyalty to the place, which is why this is a whole programme. So yes is the answer, there'll be a need, but to make sure, how do we ensure that places like Fords don't spend huge amounts of money on apprenticeship schemes and then people move on to other opportunities because they care about the place of South Essex and the brand of ASELA.
Thank you. I think it's a good point. And if you look at what's happened traditionally with, take Ford as an example, the bulk of their previous apprentices that went through onward to get skills were getting those degrees from Chelmsford, from Anglia-Ruskin Chelmsford. So I think you're right. And, talk about Brentwood for a moment. Our nearest further education provider that's not a uni and looks at those technical things actually is in a London borough. So I think, yes, it's a South Essex project, it's a Ford project. Ford are very much associated with South Essex, among others. But I think, as you say, when you start to sweep that out, you can see the broader benefit. And absolutely that should be the case, as there is a broader benefit for the Freeport. Any other comments or questions on the update report from Scott with regard to the Technical University? No? Okay, well, I'll ask members again just to note the update. Scott, would like to thank you for the work that you're doing and, you know, the learning curve that you're on. But particularly, this is a really good example of where we're engaging with the private sector. It's about us enabling them to build their futures as a business and look at their pipeline of skills coming through. So I think that's great. And, you know, we are in an exciting place, particularly with respect to automotive, with the change in fuel and propulsion and all that sort of stuff. I'm really excited about what this will bring for the future. And this is a key part of that. So thank you. Okay, so that's agreed. Update agreed. Thank you. All right, that brings us to the end of the agenda we had planned. Just a couple of closing comments from me. And I'll put this out as a request, because it wasn't on the agenda, but I just kind of want to float this. One of the things I'm conscious of is one of the biggest infrastructure projects that is scheduled to come through part of South Essex in the coming decade, shall we say, and there's work already underway, is the Lower Thames Crossing. And as I think about the Lower Thames Crossing, I look at how that overlaps into so many of the programmes we've looked at this morning. Now, there will be employment, there will be skill creation, there is a green element to that. It's absolutely an infrastructure element above everything else, rather. So what I wanted to ask is, at some point, maybe in January, can we reach out to them, ask them to come and give a presentation, I'm thinking, and then for us to consider as a joint committee what synergies that has with what we're trying to achieve, and whether there's any ways that actually they can assist us on our journey with the programmes. I'll leave it at that. I don't know if you wanted to comment now, Lynn, but I do feel that it's a big thing that we can't not mention when we come together as a South Essex Joint Committee.
So thank you, Chairman. I think it's a really good point, but just to offer some reassurance, Matt Palmer and his team are really aware of the 5 key programmes for ASELA. Those conversations have happened at officer level. And just to give you an example, there's work going on by the LTC team to recast their design to take into account the Thames Freeport and the impact potential on Port of Tilbury. So I'm pleased to say that both at a local level, but also in terms of government departments like DLUC and DFT, those joined up conversations which support us in our placemaking ambitions are happening. What might be helpful is to present back here some of that joined upness, so you can question and challenge that in terms of the leaders across South Essex, to make sure as officers we're not missing anything in that space.
Thank you. So I think if we could go through that, Lynn, perhaps in January and together again, I think that would be good. I think they would appreciate that, as well as getting in front of all us as council leaders, and I think that would be a beneficial exercise to go through. So that's it. I'd like to close the meeting. I'd like to thank you all for your attendance. I think that was a successful first meeting, especially given that we're 20 minutes ahead of closure. So thanks everyone for your attendance, and look forward to getting together with you again in January. Thank you very much.